Hello. Oh my goodness. It is so beautiful to join you here tonight. My name is Maisie Harris. I am one of the curators in the Department of Photographs here at the J. Paul Getty Museum. It is wonderful to partner with the Getty Research Institute in this program honoring the incredible work of Barbara McCullough. Woo! I am so grateful to the Getty Research Institute for their many generous loans to the exhibition Photography in the Black Arts Movement, 1955 to 1985, the exhibition that opened today in the Center for Photographs. That's an exhibition that's organized by the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, due to the government shutdown, it was closed there for a few weeks, so I'm really grateful that we get to have a nice full run here in Los Angeles, and it's open till June 14th. It's just such a thoughtful exhibition, and we're thrilled to have it here organized by the incredible, I saw him earlier, there he is, National Gallery scholar, curator, Philip Brookman, who's with us here tonight, and the incomparable Deb Willis. It's just such a, it's a real pleasure to have the exhibition here. Because it's not mine, I can say it's just full of generative images and ideas, and I hope you'll have time to come and really absorb it in the galleries. I should also mention that there's a lot of really wonderful oral histories as part of the Research Institute's African American Art History Initiative Oral Histories Project. So many of the artists represented in the exhibition, and many more, have oral histories through the GRI, and you can go onto their website and read about those and listen to those and see those. So it's just an incredible, one of the many incredible resources at the GRI. The loans that you'll see in the exhibition from the GRI are just like the tiniest tip of an iceberg of what's available at the Research Institute. There's an incredible Black Panther material, incredible Charles Britton archive. So if there's things that get you excited in the exhibition, please look to the GRI and of course to the museum collection for more of that. It's been such a pleasure in preparing for the exhibition over the past few years to have watched the Barbara McCullough pieces in the exhibition hundreds and hundreds of times, and each time there's something new in them. It's just, they're such remarkable works of art, so I do hope that you'll really give yourself time in the galleries with those incredible Barbara McCullough pieces. I'm just so excited to have her in conversation with Kristin, an incredible colleague at the GRI. What a wonderful colleague. When you have questions, Kristin has answers, and she also has a lot of questions, which is, you know, a lot, but she's so interesting in her questions and so open-ended in the way that she thinks about things. And so I know it'll be a really rich conversation this evening. I'm grateful to Barbara, to Sefran, to Kristin, and really to all of the public programs teams who make events like this possible. It's such a team effort. So thanks to everyone. Thanks to all of you for being here. I know it's a lot to get here and to give yourselves over. What an incredible gift, what an incredible experience to get to be together and absorb art together. And I think we're really helped in that if we can be present and not be tied to our devices. So I would really ask you now to quiet your devices. We would have no filming, no photography, no recording during the screening of the film this evening. And just give yourself a gift of some device-free time. What a wonderful thing that is. So please join us in welcoming Kristin Juarez to the stage. Thanks.
Thank you, Maisie. I have some more questions to ask you. I'm Kristin Juarez. I'm Senior Research Specialist here at the Getty Research Institute. As part of the J. Paul Getty Trust, the GRI is an international research center with a vast library, special collections, and array of programs committed to preserving, creating, and sharing resources related to the history of art. I'd like to give a word of thanks to everyone involved in bringing this event together this evening. Of course, to Maisie Harris, to Barbara McCullough and her family for being here, as well as Lauren Artis, Janani Subramaniam, and Greg Sandoval. I'd also like to thank our AV team and David Rue from Getty Trust. Tonight, we are joined by LA Rebellion filmmaker, the pioneer Barbara McCullough, on the occasion to screen the intimate portrait film Horace Tapscott, musical Griot, made in 2017, though we'll talk about how long it took to make this film, a testament to the endurance of this project and her vision. The film is a poetic meditation on the life of the influential Los Angeles jazz musician, composer, and community activist, Horace Tapscott. Shown in the context of the exhibition, Photography in the Black Arts Movement, the film shows the ongoing commitment that Barbara McCullough has had with documenting the creative process of artists in her community. In the exhibition, you can see the 1981 film, Shopping Bag Spirits and Freeway Fetishes, Reflections on Ritual Space from 1981, which reflects on an ongoing dialogue she's had with Black artists in Los Angeles, making art in the age of Black power. This screening extends the conversation with Shopping Bag Spirits. Together with Horace Tapscott, musical Griot, the films show a vibrant community of creative praxis where art, performance, music, poetry, and filmmaking are in active dialogue with one another. And through the recording of these communities, Barbara moves forward into the future, a way of making art that seeks to connect art making with emancipatory ideas. In her film on Horace Tapscott, McCullough tells the story in the spirit of the griot or storyteller, who in West African societies maintains the legacy, knowledge, and history of their group traditions in oral form. It documents how the music of Tapscott and his orchestra was fundamentally tied to liberatory practices in his community here in Watts. His story is told through dynamic cinematography, intimate conversations, and archival photography, and experimental cinematic techniques. And through the story that Barbara tells, we learn of the legacy of the jazz musicians here in Los Angeles. We see the unique knowledge embodied by jazz musicians, and we see their contribution to both the art form and the Black Power movement here in this city. As a native of New Orleans, Barbara McCullough has lived most of her life in Southern California. Her initial interest was in photography, but the moving image, the immediacy of video, and textures captured on film set her on a path of exploration. McCullough's work has progressed, examining the creative processes of artists, but always maintaining a fascination with experimental film and video. She sees herself as part of the continuum of African-American storytellers, whose aim is to preserve knowledge by capturing the essence of its life, spirit, and magic. Seeing beyond a mere glance, but revealing its seen and unseen essence, Barbara has stated, the work and heritage of African-American artists and cultural workers provide a link to past achievements often overlooked, but necessary to provide links for future generations to keep music and visual poetry alive. Her works include Water Ritual No. 1, An Urban Rite of Purification, Shopping Bag Spirits and Freeway Fetishes, Reflections on Ritual Space, Fragments, The World Saxophone Quartet, and Horace Tapscott, musical Griot. Water Ritual No. 1 was awarded an avant-garde master's grant by the National Film Preservation Foundation in 2010, and she is associated with the UCLA filmmakers known as the LA Rebellion, and her work has been shown in galleries, museums, and film festivals nationally and internationally. We are so pleased and honored to have her with us this evening. This program is part of the African American Art History Initiative, which launched in 2018. We call it AHI for short. AHI focuses on the history, practices, and cultural legacies of African American artists, as well as artists of the African diaspora. Through preserving archival documentation of these artists, supporting scholars, institutional collaborations, and programming, AHI is working to provide a more robust and accurate history of American art, one that can shift the narrative of global culture. You can find more programs like this in our Art on Screen series, which this is a part of, which celebrates moving image media and the intersection with art and art histories, as well as our series, Black Visions, Film as Archive. So thank you once again for joining us. We're gonna screen the film, and then Barbara and I will come on stage following and be in conversation, and we'll have time for a short Q&A following that. We welcome Barbara McCullough to the stage.
Thank you all for being here. This really warms my heart. Okay. And also thank you for the Getty to basically allowing me to, to present the film. And it was a long struggle. And actually, I don't know if you noticed that the at the end is that Horace passed away on February 29th, 1999. So his musical legacy, lives on, and it was interesting how I got into doing a film on Horace. It's the very first project I ever started to do, before Water Ritual, before Chopping Back Spirits, for anything else. Because Horace had an aneurysm, and there were other people filmmakers, what have you, who knew of him, but no one had actually done anything on Horace. And for a long time, I thought that Larry Clark's film, Passing Away, Horace participated in, as one of the actors. But I thought he had, based it on Horace's life. And he said, no, he didn't. But at the same time, he was very much aware of musicians have to struggle, to get their work done, to own their work, and the copyrights of their film, etc. But it was just such a pleasure to work with Horace, because half the time I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but then again I knew I had to do it. And I had originally recorded Horace, and he was telling a lot about his life, but I think we did it on a cassette, and I think Ron Mulvihill, who's in the audience there, he went with me. And basically everything that Horace said, he eventually wound up being, part of the film. But what did Barbara do? She lost the cassette, which is like, oh my gosh, how could that happen? But it was a real journey, because Horace was a very special person. And I think anyone who knew him, who worked with him, who's part of, whatever groups that he was doing at the time, they all felt this immense love of him, and he of them. And so because of that, and I think it shows in the film, he was just a wonderful person, and when I was like stuck, he would say something like, well, I'm gonna be doing this, maybe you might wanna come along, And, he made a suggestion. He said, well, Don, I work with Don Cherry, so basically, it might be a good idea to get together with him and Mr. Brown. I was like, wow, and that was great because, my daughter, who was in high school at the time, picked up Don, who was at his mother's house, Miss Daisy's house, and brought, Don over to, I'm trying to think, it was Crossroads, You know, it's Marla Gibbs Crossroads. And so we went there and we sat, you know, we talked and what have you. And basically, you know, I tried to stay out of the conversation, but really I wanted to get them to draw from those experiences that they had and share, because those are important things, you know. Jefferson High School was a major, major institution for young black people simply because of the fact that, you know, it was dynamic. It was all kinds of stuff happening. Who went there? Carmen de Lavallard. Who's the dancer? I can't think of his name right now. This is like my memory, really bad. Well, yeah, but I'm talking about Alvin Ailey. Thank you. You know, and Tom Bradley went there. I think, oh goodness, I can't think of the names, but basically, yeah, probably. But I didn't know that, you know, so thank you for that. You know, he's passed away recently. And basically, there's just so many people who came through Jefferson High School who went on. Ralph Bunch went to Jefferson High School. So it was a really dynamic place, you know, for young people. Because what they had that a lot of us don't have, they had role models. You know, they had role models. And that's really amazing, you know, to see that. And Horace is part of that history. And Mr. Brown he wrote the anthem, you know, the school song, you know, for Jefferson High School. You know, so.
Thank you for jumping right in. I was struck by looking at these credits, you know, all of the people who were involved in this film. And some of them range from the musicians, some of them range from the filmmakers. I wonder if you could talk a little bit around what it meant to be in community of filmmakers, of artists and dancers. I listened to you in an oral history with Senga Nengudi and Ulysses Jenkins and Maren Hassinger about making work together and making films together. If you could just share a little bit around how you have been kind of creating your films within a community of artists.
Well, when you do film work or video work, basically, it's collaborative enterprise. And, you know, I worked on people's projects. I didn't have any idea what their project was, but they needed help, so I wound up going. And also what I did is I grabbed my daughter, you know, took her with me. You know, she was in high school at the time, and she did boom on the very first project I ever worked on, Sharon and Lily Larkin's film. But it was a situation where people needed help, you know, and so, you know, you put it out there that you wanted to shoot in a certain, you know, time on a weekend, on a Saturday or whatever, and, you know, people would come forth. You know, you would ask them and they'd say yes, you know. And the same thing for me, you know, if they needed help, you know, I would go too. You know, and it was just a nice collaborative experience, you know, and I was really happy that I got a chance to, you know, to work with folks because they work with me and I work with them, and there was like a camaraderie that you understood was gonna be there. You know, I never felt like whatever I was doing, someone didn't want to participate in. And they didn't care what your subject matter was. You know, they didn't care what, you know, what your story was that you were trying to tell. All they knew is that you needed help, you know. And you would put out the cry, you know, and they would show up, you know, or they would arrange to meet you, you know, so that they could participate.
We talked a little bit around, you know, being in film school, being a mother of 2 and then 3 children, and what that meant to make a living, make a family, support a family, and also define your creative vision. And I think we saw on screen Horace Tapscott thinking through this creative vision. I wonder how you found your way to moving between documentary practice, experimental film. I think we see elements and traces of it throughout this film as well. How did you find your way while, you know, being a person in the world with real demands on you?
It was hard. Essentially, basically, I was trying to figure out my identity as a creative person, okay? And, you know, the idea that I couldn't do it didn't enter, you know, my mind. It's just that it's something that I knew I needed to do. It was my passion. And my passion was also my kids, and I had to leave them at times. I mean, I think I related to you that, you know, I'm up at UCLA editing, and I'm calling, because there was no, you know, there was no cell phone, whatever, so I'm using the payphone, hoping to have enough change to call my kids and find, is everything okay? Is everything okay? The lights got turned off, you know. So I'm using my change to call DWP and say, my kids are home alone, you know, can you turn the lights back on, you know? And they did, you know, but basically it was a lot of struggle, you know, it was a lot of struggle, but I didn't really think of it as struggle. I just thought, this happened, go take care of it. That didn't happen, go take care of it. You know, and it's kind of like, it's, I think with a lot of artists, you know that there's something that you really want to do, and you just do it. And for me, I had Senga Ngugi, who I met through other situations, basically. She was a mother, she was an artist. I knew of Betty Saw, had not met her, but then eventually I did meet her. And I always say she's like my unofficial, unknown to her at the time, you know, like mentor. Because she had children too, you know, she had girls, you know, she had, and she was still doing her art. And, you know, for Senga, it was something that she always has done and always will do. And her work is really, you know, pretty amazing because she had a way of getting to your heart, you know, by simply saying, can you bring your camera? you know, because that's something that I like to do, and you know, it'd be good if you can like shoot it. And so I wound up working with her because she taught me so much, and I don't think she understood at the time that she taught me to see. You know, she taught me to see things that were maybe not beautiful to other people, but she taught me to see the beauty in small objects, which had a lot to do with water ritual. But she helped me to just see things that, you know, may not have been visible to other people. And one of the things that for me, in terms of the Horace Tapscott film, you know, like, before I got into doing things related to ritual, it was a Horace Tapscott film, okay? And I had to put it aside for a very, very, very long time. You know, and then what was really interesting is that it taught me to see, you know, the spirit was in his plane, in his hands. And when my friend Scott Brock, who's a photographer and also an editor on the film, when he shot those photographs, which he called the magic hands, it was like, there's no way I can't have that in the film. Because what you see is that the spirit of Horace through his fingers in a way that you couldn't see it otherwise, except, you know, by the photography. And it just, it was very, very, very wonderful for me to have the experience of Horace Tapscott, but also to his family. You know, one of the reasons I knew I had to like finish the film was because, you know, his family had opened their doors to me like for years, you know, and allowed me to come and record part of their lives and Horace's, you know, and unfortunately, Horace's granddaughter, Raisha, she helped me a lot. Renee, Horace's daughter, helped a lot. Cecilia just gave me personal information. This is Horace's wife. She's passed away. So these three very influential women are not with us anymore. And then his son-in-law, he helped in terms of information on the artists and what have you, and the different musicians who played. This is Michael Dent Wilcox. And it's like, they opened their home in their minds and their hearts. And so I had a real commitment. And it's really kind of interesting because as a parent, and as parents, basically, a lot of times we have to intellectually, spiritually, kick our kids' butts. Well, one of the things about, finishing Horace Tapscott's son, it's just reversed. So my son, kind of kicked me in the butt mentally to say, finish the goddamn film, And so that was really, really very important, to have that kind of like emotional support to finish it. So.
that is such a striking moment in the film where we see Horace and his family, and preceding that, the wedding photos and the wedding party, and just to see this like fuller life of this, you know, giant of Los Angeles music world. I want to take us a little bit back to ask you about your upbringing and the role of storytelling. It comes through in this film so strongly. It comes through in Shopping Bag Spirits. You could share a little bit around what storytelling was like in your family.
Okay. Well, I am the daughter of a musician who had 4 brothers who were all musicians in New Orleans. And they played, except my father, he played what he called progressive jazz, okay? So we had all these uncles, what have you, who basically were storytellers through their music. And essentially, I was around a lot of musicians. And there were stories being told and just characters, you know, that you wanted to find out more about. And maybe you didn't get a chance to because you were too young. And you couldn't, you know, ask the kind of questions that, you know, you might have had the maturity later on in life to ask. But storytelling was always a part of, you know, my life with my family. And also, too, my family was Alcorn, A-L-C-O-R-N. And as I grew up, I hated my last name because I'd get teased in so many horrible ways. But anyway, come to find out that the Alcorn family goes back to the 1800s in terms of playing, you know, playing music. And so it's like, I wasn't a musician, but my sister, my brother was. They kind of gave up on me. But my sister and my brother were musicians. But the thing about music is that music is about storytelling in a different way. Just like the photographs that you're going to see in the exhibition, basically, each one of those photographs is about a story. You know, it's about something that, you know, happened at the time the photographer took the picture, that if you really look, there's a story there, you know. And so my mother always said that I have a way of asking questions. And not only do I have a way of asking questions, I get people answering my questions. But through the process of doing that, it's like stories are building and forming, you know. It's some of which you want to take and use for other things. But the one thing that I really, really have found is that even though I haven't done any film work in a while, I have stories that I'm assembling, or whenever I pick up the pen again or I go to the computer again, you know, about my life in New Orleans, like my life, you know, in segregation, because I grew up in segregation. So a lot of the stuff that my cousins had a chance to experience, I did not have. You know, there was no museum I could go to. Couldn't I go to the city park to go swimming? My cousins wound up being, you know, in, lifeguards. But there's stories. New Orleans has so many stories, you know. And I really got a vision about stuff I wanted to show in terms of Shopping Bag Experience was, Ishmael Reed did this book, and in this book, there was an essay, Steve Cannon, and he talked about the colors, you know, of New Orleans. And it was so interesting is because I went to bed, and maybe, I don't know how long ago, you know, from the time I read the essay. But what happened was those colors that I saw, you know, in that essay are colors they wound up being used, the posterization stuff in Shopping Bag Spirits, basically, you know, came from that vision that I got from Steve Cannon's essay. And I'm so sorry I never got a chance to meet him because he was an incredible person. But stories, you know, everybody has a story. And one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is go talk to the oldest person in your family and get the history, because all the oldest people in my family are gone. You know, they're gone. You know, and there's this thing that my son and I have talked about in terms of Alcorn family musical history. We have nobody to talk to because they are all gone, you know. And I read an article somewhere where someone approached my grandmother, Beatrice Butts Alcorn, because they were doing a thing on the history of jazz. And in the process of doing that, found out that my grandmother knew Buddy Bolden, So who's Buddy Bolden? He's one of the co-creators of jazz, which came from New Orleans and flowed to other places. And so that would make an incredible story, but I have very few people I can talk to, but one of the things I will have to do is research it, if we ever do that project, But I just want to encourage you guys, please go talk to your elders, because if you don't, once they're gone, that history is gone. I mean, even the women in my family, incredible cooks, incredible Creole cooks. And I got to tell you, that cookbook is gone. I mean, my cousin Stephanie has, recipes that were passed down to her, but it doesn't matter. Just go get the history, whether it's food history, whatever. Just go get it, because you'll be sorry, like me.
Well, you've given us an incredible legacy of Los Angeles in this film as well. You can see it in the stories that are being told and in the photography that comes in to illustrate, these stories in ways, I'm thinking about Satchmo on the being carried, see Louis Armstrong, to hear this kind of fantastical story being then shared, this document is just incredible.
There's some interesting stories about that, which I'm not going to really go into, but he was on a, State Department tour, okay? And in the process, the picture was taken. But there was some controversy because he was feeling like he was being used, because that was not his mindset at all, But at the same time, this photograph was taken, and I approached the Louis Armstrong Foundation, and I didn't know this background. I didn't find that out till like a year or two ago, But that's an incredible photograph, regardless. And the story that Horace relates is what Louis related to Horace. So there's truth there. There's truth in that story. But I don't know.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this film with us and being in conversation. I do want to open the floor for a few questions before we leave, so please do wave a hand if you have a question you'd like to ask. I see one here.
How did you get funding for this film?
I'm going to just repeat it for the microphone. How
difficult was it to get funding, and where did you get the funding from?
Extremely difficult, and most of it was out of pocket. I got a little bit. I got to meet, what is his name? He wrote this book, Three Jazz Players. I can't think of his name right now, but anyway, he was working at NEA at the time, and he introduced me to somebody, introduced me to somebody else, and I got, some seed money, which was good. But then I got money from the Brody, and then I got money from Muni Arts, okay? But it all came out of my pocket, really, which is why it took so long to do, And it was. I think filmmakers now, young filmmakers, have an easier way to go than the people that I knew way back when who were doing films, some of whom are here now. Basically, it was very difficult. First of all, black people want to make films, or people want to make films about black heritage. It was not an easy thing to do at all, and most of the filmmakers basically, kind of went into their own pocket, and it was the way of the world. And luckily, it's a little bit better now.
There's a microphone coming to you.
Yes, where else might the film be shown? I came in a little late and missed the first part of it, and I would love to see it over and over and over and over.
Oh, thank you very much.
Where will it next be shown?
I don't have a screening for it yet. I have some things that I have to take care of. But I would like to show it. I would like to have a, what do you call it? Oh goodness, a distributor. That's what I would like to have, a distributor. Usually when I show the film, I usually go with it, primarily because I want to make sure that nobody is copying anything, nobody is photographing anything, because of the fact that it's a very special project, and I want to be able to, when I do, present it to a distributor, that basically there's no question, about the ownership of it. But I would like to have you see it, you know, again and again and again.
We have two more down here, and I think these will be our last two questions.
What inspired you to make the film on Horace Tapscott specifically?
Okay, Horace, I had seen Horace play. He used to play every year. He used to have like this Hyde Park Jazz Festival, okay? And, you know, I'd seen him there, and I'd heard of, you know, of him. And Horace had an aneurysm, okay? And people thought he was not, you know, gonna live. And essentially, you know, I'm going like, well, all these people know of Horace and filmmakers, whatever, you know, like, nobody's done a project on Horace Tapscott. So that's how I got, you know, interested. And I worked with K. Curtis Lyle in terms of, you know, some background information. It was really crucial for me to know, which is one of the things that I'm really, you know, grateful for his participation in the way that he did. But it was like, I got to go talk to Horace and have to go, you know, basically see what I could do about, you know, doing a film, which he did consent to after we had done that incredibly dumb thing on my part and losing the cassette. But I was really very happy to participate in the film with him because he was just, you know, very knowledgeable of the history of music in Los Angeles. He was very open in terms of sharing his knowledge with younger musicians. You know, and there's a book that Steve Asori did, and it was on Horace, but also I think it was on the orchestra. And basically, there's pages of all the musicians who came through one of Horace's, you know, projects, one of the orchestras, and there's like a couple of pages, over 300 musicians. And it's really pretty amazing because everybody who was in music at the time, you know, like I think even, you know, Butch Morris flew in at a time because of the fact that, you know, it was something that was significantly happening, you know, musically, you know, in Los Angeles. And young people wanted to deal with creative music. You know, they didn't want to just play the standards. You know, they wanted to play creative music.
Last question here.
Sure. How you doing? Mm-hmm. This is a little bit more of a comment, and, you know, please feel free to add to it. But you know, I'm pretty, you know, involved in the LA music scene, and I just feel like, you know, I watch this film and I think about just, you know, why isn't, you know, LA like this now? But, you know, I see that there's so much jazz happening in LA because of, you know, people in the wake of people like Kamasi and things like that. And I feel like, you know, Horace is such a big part of that. And I think that having this film and having visual, you know, proof of it and having these interviews, it's just so important for, you know, this younger generation of jazz musicians that's in LA and that are, you know, really doing some great things. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Oh, you're quite welcome. You know, actually, when it was first shown at the Pan African Film Festival, Kamasi Washington was there. And one of the things that he said is that he had always heard, you know, of Horace. And basically, you know, like he'd never actually seen him play or anything because I think maybe he was like too young at the time. But it's like, you know, when I listen to Kamasi Washington, I've seen him perform, I won't say perform, play. It's interesting because, you know, you can see the evolution, you know, from Horace, you know, to that particular person and to other people too. And that's really gratifying.
Oh, I've got one last question.
This is not a question. Basically, I just want to make sure that you know that we are so very, very thankful for the work that you did. You are a griot.
Oh, jeez. Oh, wow.
And that, the thing is, I don't know how much we realize, but this film is so layered because I was looking on the wall and there were side stories here, people in the background names. I mean, over half the people on there are our ancestors. Over half. And you know, if the story is not told, you know, the story is forgotten. So thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you, Kamal.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for sharing this film, your stories, and your work with us. We are honored to be here with you this evening.